I have a little experiment for us for today. I'm stuck on something, and it's probably the first thing to catch some shame over. And it's probably a good problem that I think other non-technical people would find value in. And
I hate to tell you this, but a lot of
let's see.
technical people don't know this stuff too.
Yeah,
Most people are just afraid to just say, I'm not really sure about this thing. And I notice this. I see this on LinkedIn. People are like, I'm using Claude Code in the terminal and it's amazing. And I just did it for the first time. You inevitably are going to end up learning things about your computer by using Claude because you're going to run into stuff that you've just ran into. There's going to be things where you're like, that was amazing. I don't know what it did, but it did something. And then you're going to run into something where you go, okay, I actually need to learn a little bit more about this thing.
yeah, and like how exciting. So I wonder, could I like share my screen and ask you my problem?
Sure. And let's see what it is.
What's up, dude? It's freaking Friday, man. We made it.
Friday, dude. And it's very warm out. I did like a little walk
Extremely.
today and I was like, I actually got like a little sunburn on my neck from yesterday. I was like, holy crap.
Extremely, dude. Extremely. Well, we're about to get even warmer because we're 2 days away from heading to sunny South Florida for our dear friends at G2I and their amazing week of conferences that they put on. You and I are going to be at AI Engineering, but it's also React Miami, so it's kind of like the Coachella of tech, or maybe the
They
Ultra.
have figured that out. It's kind of amazing because, you know, I mean, you and I know about G2I out for staffing. We've used them
Of
before. I
course,
heard
for
about them
years.
on a podcast back in the day, and I had no idea they did the conferences, but this is a big conference. It's awesome. It reminds me of if you've ever seen Halt and Catch Fire when their big thing is they're going to Comdex to demo the computer. I always felt like maybe that's South by Southwest maybe today, maybe that's CES today. This kind of feels like it could be that, because none of those quite captured. I mean, look, everything looks better on television. So maybe in Halt and Catch Fire, it just seemed way cooler to be going to Comdex. Steve Jobs is demoing the Mac. They're trying to show their computer. I'm thinking this could be pretty awesome. But I'm excited also because we haven't traveled for a conference like this.
We usually stay right here in New York.
Yeah. So we're putting it out there and doing the thing and we're excited.
We are excited, and like it's no easy feat. Shout out to Michelle Backles and your team. This is no easy feat, man. And we're excited to see you all on stage and do your thing, and we're going to benefit too. And I'm excited because I think there's a new era that's kind of been born for the Strictly from Nowhere podcast, and I'm really interested to try and have those discussions with other tech founders that are building product. We're not going there really to represent a product that we've built. We're going there as industry professionals, and the thing that we have to offer people is not necessarily our dev shop, which we're going to be surrounded by a whole bunch of technical people and devs, and like that would just be strange to try and sling our business. But we're going to an event where we kind of have to figure out like what is the value, what is the thing that we could offer to somebody that is valuable and can start a relationship with. And so it's kind of a new dawn for us with Strictly from Nowhere, because what a perfect platform and a perfect audience to evangelize different products and tools that the audience or other attendees are going to be building. And so I'm excited to just have those conversations and give value first to the people that we meet, and either host the founders, host their products, whatever combination. But that's like an exciting new frontier for us, go to a conference with like a different value proposition than we normally would.
Yep. I love it. I think that in terms of networking, the best thing to do for any of these events is not go with the idea of selling.
Something
I
to
think
sell,
that's
right?
sales 101. I've been working on a little bit of a manual here, a field manual on the side. And that's one of the things I've been thinking about is a lot of engineers hate the idea of sales. Everybody hates being sold. So you never go to the conference with this idea that I got something to sell and I'm going to hawk this thing. You go with the idea that I'm just going to make new friends. I'm going to hear some problems. And if an opportunity happens to catch my ear, I'm just on the lookout for that. But I don't jump all over, you keep it casual, so to speak. So I don't know what's going to come out. But when you go to a conference, you're really just looking to make connections. You're looking to connect the people that you meet with other people that you know. That goodwill kind of creates that surface area for luck we're talking about when it comes to business.
What I'm really hopeful for every time I leave the house to go to one of these conferences is most people go to the conference with a goal. It's like a KPI. I need to meet 5 people a day or whatever they need, especially vendors. If you pay it to have a booth or something, like, there probably is a goal from your sales team, like how many emails.
Yeah, I mean, if you paid for the booth, you got
I count on the fact that they have a goal, and if whatever they did sucked me in, perfect. That's the fly trap theory.
I learn about great products at these events too. That's another thing. As an agency, we use and recommend products to our customers. So it is just as valuable for me to learn about something I hadn't learned about before.
It's happened many times, right?
It happens all the time. Where I've sat there and was blown away by something that I saw. And sometimes I just don't have a use for it at the moment, but I file it away and I say, hey, that's cool. I got it here. So I'm thinking
the other thing is we maybe wrote off a product that once upon a time it was like either a little kludgy or like not exactly fit our use case, maybe too expensive. How many times have we like walked up to a vendor and been pleasantly surprised that like now it's usable for us. Now it's valuable.
Right. There was I want to say a product I remember. Yeah, there's been a few products like that where I've not had a use case, but I've been thinking about them. I'm like, that's in my I think like Post Hog was like that for a little bit. I was like, oh, that's a pretty cool. I saw them and I didn't use it right away, but I have used it on a couple of projects now, but it took a few months for it to come up and for me to say, hey, I'm going to use that product.
Yeah, I think we did that with like probably a Vercel conference, like Ship, like the first year of Ship. It was probably like Optimizely, it was probably Sentry, it was probably Clerk, like some of these.
Oh, yeah, Clerk was
products.
there. I had to use them, yeah.
Yeah, right. So like definitely valuable. But, I love going to these relatively technical conferences as a non-technical individual because I get to have like such cool conversations with people. They go, like most technical people are going to a technical conference to have technical conversation. And like, I would hope that I'm like a refreshing person to run into where like I'm less interested in the technology, I'm more interested in the technologist and your story and all that good stuff. So it's fun for me to just be in a room of nerds. I am a nerd too myself in some other ways, but like it's just I really enjoy that. I really enjoyed that part of Omicron. Like I like being I also like being like the butt of the joke sometimes. Like when you're in an uncomfortable situation, I've got you could always like defer to me. Like this guy is truly non-technical, which is really fun. But I am trying. And so I have a little experiment for us for today. I'm stuck on something and it's probably the first thing to catch some shame over. And it's probably a good problem that I think other non-technical people would find value in. And
I hate to tell you this, but a lot of technical people don't know this stuff too. Most people are just afraid to just say, I'm not really sure about this thing. And I notice this. I see this on LinkedIn. People are like, I'm using Claude Code in the terminal, and it's amazing. And I just did it for the first time. You inevitably are going to end up learning things about your computer by using Claude because you're going to run into stuff that you've just ran into. There's going to be things where you're like, that was amazing. I don't know what it did, but it did something. And then you're going to run into something where you go, okay, I actually need to learn a little bit more about this thing.
Yeah, and like how exciting. So I wonder, could I like share my screen and ask you my problem?
Sure. And let's see what it is.
So maybe first things first. Let me get rid of this one. Let me clear up a screen here. Let me put this over here. It's that open. Cool. Let me share my screen.
Yep. Let's do it.
I'm going to take us from the top so that everybody can keep up with me, even though I already know where we're headed. So I have a problem. I have a problem. My problem is my computer uses a lot of bandwidth, like maxes out bandwidth, makes uploads extremely slow, downloads extremely slow. It makes these Rivercast recordings extremely slow. Something is going on my computer that's using a huge amount of memory. And so one of the ways that I could potentially solve that is more memory, but I just bought this computer, which had double, maybe triple the amount of memory that I was using on my PC.
Well, you got 24 gigabytes of
I
memory.
got 24 gigs of memory. It's not nothing.
I want to give you kind of just to give you an idea of what mine's running at. So I have 128 gigabytes.
Yeah, right. Come on, man. We're not we're not even in the same university over here.
But I am using 20 gigs running everything that I am right now. I've got, let me see how many tabs I've got open. I mean, maybe 20 tabs right now. I've got multiple terminals running Claude Code in the background. I've got Slack, I've got my Hey email. I've got my Notion calendar. So these are additional, all Chrome processes. One thing to bear in mind, though, is that in my case, the more memory you have available, the more memory your computer will use just because it has a lot of overhead. So you can't necessarily say, look, I'm only using 20 gigs and you would normally be using, your computer naturally tries to optimize that process.
Of course.
Yours hitting 17, if you had less, it would try to use less in some respect. And you still have some overhead, right? Like you have,
I have available.
Some overhead. Yeah,
I have available. And for anybody that's wondering, here's a list of all the programs that are like actively using some type of memory. And so you could see it if I open up a new tab real quick just in the browser, you'll like see the memory change. It went from like 1729 to like 1774 before I even do anything. If I go to a website, depending on the weight of the website, it might increase a little bit. Now I'm over 18. So like this is just a little example of like how if I have a bunch of tabs open, for example, lots of us, especially marketers, are using Chrome family tabs, like groupings of tabs.
Yeah.
So if I open a grouping, watch my memory just completely spike as all these tabs open simultaneously, and depending on the one that I'm using, I could just like totally be at absolute max capacity.
Now Riverside is great because Riverside is recording this. You're getting crushed on the memory, dude. So if you were just watching this video, we were talking over each other. It's going to come through crispy because it's recording locally, but at 18 gigs, your bandwidth got crushed.
It's right when I push at 20 gigs, I'm starting to get crushed. And so some web applications are very, very freaking heavy. So when I opened a tab a couple seconds ago, I was opening Canva, YouTube Studio, Contentful, like all these things open in one big group that I use when I publish this podcast. So I just did that because I know that post-production comes. I open this group of tabs that I'm using simultaneously. I need to be able to have all these open at the same time. I'm back and forth between all of them. I don't want to log in, log out. I just want to go. And so you can now see like when that's happening, regardless of the recording, if I'm pushing 19, 20, sometimes I'm really at full capacity, 23 and beyond. You can't imagine the download speed, the upload speed, just navigating, just using an editor tool is like brutally painful. And so I'm aware of it. We've always been aware of it. We're like, what should we do? Do we throw an Ethernet cable at it? Well, I don't know if I need an Ethernet cable. I'm like on a dedicated 5G network. It's the only device on the 5G network.
An Ethernet cable is going to give you more network speed if that's the problem. But you're looking at 18, 19, like you're basically using between your memory and your cache, right? Like all of your physical memory. The swap. What is swap? Right, swap is actually your computer is moving files to basically using some of the hard drive. For just the way to think about this is swap is saying, hey, I'm moving some of this to the hard drive because the RAM is getting full, and I still need this stuff. So that's if your swap is spiking. And so when we think about servers, sometimes we'll use swap to handle a spike without necessarily adding more RAM to a machine. It can save you some money if we're thinking about a web app to add some swap that'll allow that to handle a spike better. What's happening is in the spikes, it's pushing things to swap.
Okay, so interesting. Now, what I'm trying to do is a couple days ago, I installed Claude Code in my terminal. And I also have a PC, and I installed Claude Code in PowerShell terminal that's over there as well. And so this morning I sat down and I was like, you know what? I want to know. I want Claude to tell me what is going on my computer that is using so much memory. I did the same thing for the battery life on the PC, my Asus is like notorious for like a super shitty battery. And so I ran a diagnostic and found all these background applications that are running upon launch that are just running silently in the background, things that just don't even need to be on the computer because they've literally never been used, installed either from manufacturer, or I installed it once upon a time and like never actually used the tool, whatever. All of those things are consuming battery on that other PC. So I used PowerShell, which was, it made me feel like so just powerful. I was asking it a question. I know what I wanted to do. It's asking me if I approve things, and like we're just going back and forth in this big application uninstallation process, this big diagnostic over the battery to tell me about battery health, and like just checking on the hardware, and like that felt so cool and like fully worked. I left the computer off the charger yesterday and I got almost 6 hours of battery out of it using it, which was great. Normally I'd be 1 hour. So awesome. So I sat down on the computer this morning and I was like, I want to see if I can use Claude in the terminal to help me diagnose what the heck is going on as far as CPU usage. And so I used it and I got to a point where I think PowerShell's abilities are different from the terminal application that I'm using. And I came to you and I said that. And you said, well, let's make an episode out of it. And so we're here. And so I'd love to maybe recreate my situation, get stuck again, if that makes sense. And maybe you can help me to get around that.
Sure. Yeah, let's do it. What I'll tell you first is Mac OS, Linux, and Windows all are different operating systems. They have a different language, so to speak. I'm going to try and like simplify this so it kind of makes sense for a non-technical audience. PowerShell uses a type of bash scripting, it's a type of language to communicate with Windows that will not work in a Mac. Mac and Linux are very similar because they are based in an older Unix operating system, so they use a lot of the same commands. So for me, going from Mac to Linux and Linux to Mac is pretty straightforward. They're almost one-to-one. They're not truly one-to-one, but the language at least is very close. You go into Windows and I'm like all thumbs. You know, it's just a totally different thing. It doesn't use the same commands at all. So when someone says, I think someone at one of our talks once came up to me with a Windows machine and goes, I need help. They had PowerShell. I was like, I have no idea what. I know how to do this in a Linux environment or a Mac environment, but I would not be able to do what you need to do in that environment.
So maybe you can help me here.
So yeah, you run Claude, you've got the standard Mac terminal open.
Cool. So let me just start how I was going to start, which is like I want to understand from my activity monitor what is using so much memory and how can you help me?
Got it.
Cool. So I just want to know what is using so much memory in my computer and get some recommendations for how I can resolve it. Cool. So going through a couple bash commands, and I am not even sure what it's asking me, but we just continue.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this can get dangerous, just so you know. If you don't know exactly what you're doing.
Well, I'm just reading it layman. It says get total system RAM. Do you want to proceed?
Right.
Yeah,
everything
right.
that it's asking right now is safe. I'll just let you know.
Right.
The things you want to start looking at, and Claude tends to be pretty good at this. It'll ask you permission, and it is pretty good at not like bricking the whole. I'll give it that, bricking the whole system. Right now, it's basically looking at system logs effectively to figure out what you're looking at on the left. It's pulling that because that exists in the system logs itself. Right. So it's pulling those in this raw form without the pretty table and everything. So
what it came back to me with, I'll just scroll back up here.
I mean, you can see what you see there, right?
Yep.
It's fully your Google Chrome.
Fully Google Chrome. So 29 processes, by far the biggest consumer. So then it gives quick wins, recommendations, tame Chrome. This is your number one problem. Close tabs you aren't actively using a tab manager extension like OneTab or the Great Suspender to suspend inactive tabs. That's an interesting option. I know in Chrome it has like a, what is that called? Inactive tab monitor for like a certain amount of time. The tab goes to sleep, but like I don't really see that work very often. And I did recently just play with it. So maybe using one of these tools to help silence tabs and not use energy from them. But for right now, Chrome is using a huge amount. It probably is all coming from Riverside because it's like the only thing I've opened, that in my email.
Right. Well, you have Slack, which is technically Chrome, because that's going to be running Electron. So a lot of your desktop apps just are actually running Chrome, and so that's where Slack comes in. And Slack is likely doing a lot of listening and things in the background because it needs to get the chats. Same thing with Dropbox, right? It's always syncing. Not a big deal there. Creative Cloud, you could cancel that, but again, it's pretty small. But when you look at the totals that it has, like 7 gigs, and then let's say 8, 9, 10, 11 gigs, let's say in there. So, just like back of the napkin math, you're not coming anywhere near the 18.75
right
that you're seeing.
That's like the rest of this stuff all the way down. I mean, look how long.
Yeah. You've got a lot of little shit that's just
a lot of stuff is just running. And so like these tiny little 10 megabytes, whatever, these all just add up.
Mm-hmm.
And so from here is like kind of where I'm stuck, because it looks like the machine is death by 1,000 cuts, just running 8 million things. I don't know how this all got here in the first place. I don't know what's safe to remove. Like, I want more information from Claude. Do you
go deeper? Did you try?
Well, so what I did next was, are there any applications running in the back that could be uninstalled? Like literally, if I have an application that I'm actually not using, why is it even on the machine and taking any power from me anyway? So like, could I just slim from there? So that was my next question.
Yeah, I think your Adobe's probably going to be, because you're probably not using Adobe right now.
The only thing I use from Adobe is Adobe Acrobat to do documentation and PDF reading and signatures, e-signatures.
Yeah, but you probably only need that when you need it. You probably don't need that.
Well, I probably don't need Creative Cloud. I'm not using Photoshop. I'm not using like any Lightroom or any of those Creative Cloud products. So I probably don't need that. But I also don't really see that that's like a huge offender, Creative Cloud running 300 megs in the background.
I think there's a lot of other, because if you look down here, look, Adobe Content Synchronizer, Finder Extension 8. I think, and look, Adobe Crash Processor 8. I think that there's like Creative Cloud, but then there's a bunch of little Adobe processes that are rolled up that it's not gonna find. So let it run.
So look, this is what it's coming back. I'm asking it to list non-system process using significant memory.
So let's you may want to change that. So here's where like using your human brain can help. Is you may want to ask it to start aggregating processes like those Adobe processes, because it may not find these because it's not. In aggregate, they're a lot, but they're all below the threshold that it's trying to search.
So let's adjust. Let's ask that. But for right now, it did Adobe Creative Cloud. 6+ processes are running.
Yeah.
It's definitely aggregating some of those. The CC Desktop, the library. If you don't use Adobe apps regularly, I'm reading from right here, uninstall it entirely.
Yeah,
but then I have other stuff that's on here too.
I wouldn't uninstall because you are using it. I would go into that. See that system settings, login items. I was going to say that's an important one.
Yeah.
Stop it from starting Creative Cloud every time you turn on your computer, and then only open Creative Cloud when you need it, when you need Acrobat. But you don't need that running at all times.
So you think to do this one to like just stop auto launching?
Yeah.
So let's do
I would look at that. That because it doesn't seem like you have a ton of bloatware in there in general.
Cool. So I just told it plain English, let's stop auto launching. Which I want, bro. Like I want to sit down at the computer, I want to turn it on Monday, and I don't want 20 applications. I don't want Slack opening, I don't need Chrome opening. I just want to open to a blank computer and I will manually open what I want to be working on.
Right. You may have, let's see what happens. I know like with Linux, for example, this stuff is all just a file. So I can like go into a file and change these types of things and make sure that the stuff that auto launches, etc., are only things that I want. Every time I've done this on a Mac, I've used the GUI before. So I actually don't know if it's going to have the
system event. So terminal app wants to access control system events, and I want that. So list system-wide non-Apple launch agents.
Yes,
we didn't process anything yet. I'm just trying to get a list of things that I should or shouldn't do. So here's everything that auto launches. I'll disable them in categories. Some of these I probably want to auto launch. Like I probably want Google Drive that holds our whole company active.
Yes, you probably want Dropbox, Google Drive, your printer.
I think
what makes sense here is Adobe, and unless you want to get rid of Malwarebytes, like and not use that antivirus anymore.
Yep.
But
so
that doesn't seem to be tipping the scales.
I'm gonna put like a whole thing in here. So like let's disable Adobe from launch. Adobe Malwarebytes. Probably
I feel like that's it.
Well, the Insta360 is for a camera, external web camera that I don't use.
But yeah, I have the same.
You
camera.
use the Insta.
I don't think I have the software installed, but yeah, you have the software to like adjust the color and all that stuff.
Yes, I have all that. Now the other things here I want to leave. The other things I have here I want to leave. So like Dropbox we use for documents. I want that to be to open automatically and just be available in my Finder and sync and all that. I want that. Epson is my printer. I just want that to like always be running updates and just leave that. Google Drive, same thing. Display link for USB display is for my external monitor driver. So I want to leave that. And so the only ones that I think I really want to remove is Adobe.
And you're just disabling them from startup.
From start. I'm not uninstalling anything. So I'm just disabling them for right now. And let's leave the others alone.
And just another like prompting tip, you don't have to say let's leave the others alone. It's like thank you.
I'm doing it for theatrics.
Yeah. I'm just for people watching, like you could just tell it what to do. You don't have to.
I'm doing it for theatrics. Don't steal
I do the same thing though. I find myself writing complete like very you can be very curt, so to speak.
I mean, bro, we hear people that are like, you should be nicer to your agent. Use please and thank you and pleasantries and tell it that you want to take it out for a steak dinner. You know what I'm saying?
You're not going to get your universal high income check at home.
Yeah, right.
Going to conveniently skip sending you your being alive paycheck. No.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So this is disable Adobe Launch Agent. Yes.
Yeah, I was just read. It's okay.
Spoke to. Okay, cool. So I see the disable, but before we move on, maybe like a thing, because like anytime I see like, whoa, error, what happened here? So these things happen, but Claude finds a way around it. I'm trusting that it's going to find a safe way around it. And then in the end, do I disable the Adobe Launch Agent? I see that this was that it is working towards the full disable, and this would be my last step, is to follow what it's suggesting.
Yes.
So let's do it.
I think you're okay.
Last but not least, disable the system launch. Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of Adobe stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, you guys.
So now this is malware. Let's do that. We're just going to rip through all these. Now there is an interesting option here in the terminal, which is which probably would have applied to Adobe, which was option number 2. Nope, doesn't give me option number 2 because that would be a no. But sometimes it says like yes for the remainder of this app and all of its extensions. So you only have to say yes once. So let's disable.
Yeah, these are more like sensitive commands, so they are likely now what it's doing is it's checking to make sure it worked. You could check this by opening system settings, and we could have seen like that should be reading from the updates it's making here. Anyway, what it's doing there is it's checking to see if what it did stuck.
So here's what I was talking about before. This is moving on to the Insta360 application. If I click 2, it won't ask me again for the launch.
Yeah, that's I think that's safe to do here.
So let's do 2 instead.
But it is interesting. you're demonstrating an example of, though, if you don't know what you're doing. I would recommend for stuff like this, get the analysis and then just like go to the system control and do it yourself. Probably would be even faster, because it's going to like when you disable startup of Adobe, it'll be one click and it'll do all the things that it needs to disable itself from startup. Whereas this has to go like in a 1-by-1 fashion. And that can be a little bit tricky. And now it's killing the running processes, which is cool too. So it's actually quitting these stuff.
Yep. And we'll see if it messes us up in any way, but it shouldn't, because I'm only using Chrome at the moment. And so
these are one example, though. This is why UIs exist. They're supposed to have like tested methods of showing you, hey, these are the things. Even knowing what you're doing. I don't know all the things that are needed to like to remove Adobe Creative Cloud from the launch of Apple. I don't think that many engineers ever think to do that this way. So it's not like you're going to get anybody that knows this stuff.
Right.
You know, they're able to see all the commands and everything.
So it looks like, correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like we did all this stuff. You can see like the disables, kill the running process, do all that stuff. And now what it's doing is check total memory usage now.
Yep, I'm looking at, though, on the left-hand side, it hasn't made a dent in anything.
It didn't make a dent. Of course, that's why I'm showing this. I just want to see if any of this was the culprit. No. So let this run for a second. Here's my new table. I'm happy these things are disabled, because they're certainly not helping my situation, but they're not the culprit. This like did not, if anything, my usage is increasing.
Well, why? So that goes back to what I said earlier. Why is your usage increasing? Because the computer has more available. More available.
That could be true.
It's going to try and maximize what it has available to it. So my point is, I actually don't think, so let's just bring this full circle. I think you're chasing a red herring.
I think so too.
So, and I'll tell you why. When something starts running slow, and I've kind of withheld this the entire time, and I've said this forever, it is your bandwidth. The number one thing that is your bottleneck almost always is your network connections. This is true of web applications. This is true of streaming. The thing that takes the most time is moving data over Wi-Fi, over the wire, under the ocean, right? Moving that stuff back and forth. What was happening when you opened those tabs is, yes, your RAM was spiking, but your computer was figuring out how to make it work.
Right,
it was moving things to swap. It was caching files, right? It would do that. There are times when your RAM is the problem, but really what happened was you opened up Canva, you opened up a whole bunch of Slack, a whole bunch of things that started to suck up your bandwidth on your Wi-Fi. You started to command more data over the wire. So I think you need to get the hard wire.
I think I need a hardwire. I do think having more RAM would be helpful. I also think there are other things to do, like a lot of the tools that we use. Right now I'm using Riverside in the browser. I probably should be using Riverside in the desktop.
I don't know about that.
I don't know
Riverside
if it opens
a
web
desktop
app.
Might just be Electron Riverside.
Right, a web app. Right.
Again, just think about what you're saying.
You're
the
right.
The thing of Riverside that sucks up the thing is the video. It's the actual streaming. So the reality is, if you have a bandwidth problem, you can try the hardwire, which will get you better, right? So one of the reasons, think about the way the hardwire works, right? The data is going to flow from the modem right to the computer. It's not going to go through walls. It's not going to go through the air. It's not going to be affected by all the things that Wi-Fi can be affected for. Hardwire is just going to be faster. It's going to be able to handle more. But it could be literally your ISP coming into the house. It could be your upload and download being throttled by Optimum, Verizon, whoever you're using. That can be the case. You can add more RAM to this machine. It's not going to change network. It's not going to change network connectivity issues. You may even find that it starts using all that RAM and you go, what's happening? I added more RAM. Because your computer's able to use more RAM. So it's going to. My computer basically knows that it's limitless. It's effectively limitless RAM. The only reason I have this is when I run local models, I can run larger local models that need a bunch, that are going to basically just suck up a chunk of RAM in one fell swoop, which is why I got that. But most people don't need that. You have 24 gigabytes of RAM. A marketer should be good on 24 gigabytes of RAM. You should probably be good on 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's not going to change that. When that starts happening, that's not your RAM choking. If you were telling me your mouse was frozen and you couldn't change tabs, that starts to signal to me you're maxing out some kind of process on the computer. But your mouse is moving. You're moving around your computer normally.
Totally.
You're not hitting memory maximums. You're hitting network max. So there's something going on with your network. I think that you've got a situation right now where you're inside of a wooden box outside of your house and you have your modem that's working. Another interesting fact, and I kind of learned this just myself, debugging my own connectivity issues, right? You remember, I used to have the same problems you were having. Turns out my computer was connected to a 2.5 gigahertz network, to the 2.5G network instead of the 5G network. Then I discovered I had a 6G network. So here's the funny part. I'm connected to my IoT stuff. The cameras and stuff around my house are connected to that IoT network. I made another network which was 5G for me, but then I added a 6G and I noticed, oh my God, the bars were lower on the Wi-Fi with 6G. How could that? I said, how could that be? I asked Claude, I said, I thought 6G would be better, and said it is if you're closer to the modem. So here, or the router. The funny thing about the 2.5G, right? The wavelength is able to pass through walls more effectively even than 5G. The higher the gigahertz, G, 6G, 7G, the harder it is for that to pass through the walls. So, believe it or not, I'm still on the 6G because it works great. I still get great upload and download speed, but I did notice that it was less Wi-Fi bars, and it was just, that's physics at work, the basic physics of Wi-Fi networks. But again, I just learned something because I hadn't really ever considered it before. I'm not a network engineer. I didn't work for a cable company. I never even considered anything like that before. But once I had to debug the issue, I immediately was like, wait a minute, why is 6? Again, asking the question. I didn't just blindly let it do its thing. I connect to 6G. I go, wait, why do I have less bars? That's physics at work. Higher gigahertz means lower ability to pass through the wall, which is where your extenders start to come in, right? So you can so your 5G, you may be passing through a lot of walls. But you specifically, what's happening is when you open these programs like Canva, they start to suck up your bandwidth on the network. I don't actually think you have an issue even with the Wi-Fi getting to the computer, because when you close those things, you're fine. So you're likely consuming too much data. Now, the hard line may help, but you can ask Claude that question and he'll give you a bunch more, because I am not a network engineer like that. But that would be the train of thought I would start to go down and ask it. But I'm going to go ahead and say we're seeing network issues. You're better off just keeping them tabs closed.
Right.
But I don't think if you had like 20 tabs of Google search open, it's probably not the same as having 3 or 4 Canva tabs open, and a Slack. You got to remember, those are constantly using bandwidth because you're getting this instant communication. Like my Slack is pinging off right now. The 6G seems to be working fine.
Right.
But these were all things I was really thinking about. Is really interesting to think about the idea of do we need more gigahertz? At what point does it make sense to hardline? The hardline bypasses all those issues entirely.
What I really like about using the terminal, though, like Claude in the terminal, it makes the computer feel more accessible to me. It's hard to go, the scenario would be I'd be going on YouTube and trying to figure out what's the proper video for me to watch to try and troubleshoot this. Then I have to assume that somebody has this particular scenario. That's not always going to be the scenario. I like the ability that I can open the terminal and just ask it to give me an opinion on a problem. And then it can help provide solutions. And then it can even help actually solve the problem. So this is what I was doing. This is what I feel like I'm going to continue to do, because it just makes me feel like I have more access to the machine. Anytime something feels weird or I want to do something, I have power here. I also now just have Claude available in the terminal and don't necessarily have to use the browser for Claude as well, which might also be helpful.
Yeah, it's definitely different use cases. I love it, especially on my machine, because Linux doesn't give you a ton of these GUIs for managing tons of stuff. Sometimes I don't remember where like the config is, so I'll have Linux do, or I don't remember the syntax of the exact like the monitor configuration. So I'll let Claude handle that for me and just kind of watch what it's doing. So I think a lot of Linux folks do that, where they're trying to debug something on their computer, and it's very worthwhile. So really cool though to see that you're aware of the terminal, you know how to get into the back end. I encourage people to just keep digging deeper on those questions. You should ask it, just what I'm saying right now. Ask it, hey, it feels like just this whole bit about the network. It'll give you some research, some validations on that. It might even be able to confirm, checking your network, saying, okay, open the tabs again. So I've done that. It'll have you close those tabs, open them, and it'll be able to tell you what your bandwidth up and down is with those open, without them open. It'll help you use it as like this debugging helper. The other thing that's great is even if you remember the commands, then you got to comb the logs, right? So you saw those little grep commands that it was using.
Yeah.
That's it, combing the logs. You would have to do all of that yourself, and that's stuff that's like great for the machine. Just like bunch of tokens, comb it, figure it out. So machines are good at stuff like that. Kind
of cool. Well, dude, thanks for the help. And I knew I was going to find myself in that scenario. It's still an unsolved mystery. Who knows if the hard line is going to work for me or whatever. But dude, we'll talk about it more on the plane. I'll see you on Sunday. And
dude, I haven't flown in a long time.
The next time we I fly a lot and I love it. So we'll go into the Delta Lounge and I'll get you right, man.
I don't know why you like it's so funny you love that Delta Lounge.
I love the Delta Lounge.
The last time I flew, funny story, is I flew to Disney with the kids during COVID. So we had to wear masks, and we were at the very back of the plane, hit some turbulence, and I started getting kind of the motion sickness. So I pulled the mask down. This was a time like you couldn't do this, right? But I'm getting motion sick. I need like more air. I'm going to throw up. I could feel it. I was like, I'm going to throw up. And as I do that, the kids pull their masks just and it was so, and like you would have thought in this moment that this, the stewardess could not have been less helpful at all. Literally backed away like it was a toxic waste zone. Thankfully, on the flight to and from Orlando, lots and lots of parents. Ours was not the only kid that threw up too. The other kid threw up. Parents are throwing wipes. They got freaking paper towels, right? Like everybody came to our aid, but Delta stewardess service.
It's probably because they're called flight attendants and they don't like stewardess.
Whatever.
This sounds like a you problem, my friend.
No, I think that it was during COVID. People were like, no, like I don't want to touch, like, and then somebody said to them, can you at least give us a garbage bag? So just, the passengers had to help. I'm not a, that was the last time I flew, which is so after that we've been driving to Florida ever since. But yeah, I hear you don't have to take your shoes off anymore. Is that true?
No idea. I've clear NTSA pre-check, so you're gonna go.
I don't do any of that.
We'll go the slave route.
We'll see. I mean, you got to wait for me, so it don't matter.
That's fine. I'll wait on the other side with my shoes
in the Delta Lounge with those nasty powdered eggs. I remember you took me there. I was like, wait, these are powdered eggs. I thought I was getting like the premium treatment. It was just like glass, same chairs they got on the outside with the Delta logo.
With the Delta logo. Yeah. Take my money. Too funny. All right, dude. I'll check you later. Thanks for your episode.
Peace.